Masih bagai. Masih bagai. Abingene garage iteksi.
Pelele kanje uzumi.
Yeah.
Sinocala kawasibona ukuthi yenzakalani.
Nje uzume out grand.
It's very important because students are our future, and most of the people who are suffering are students because they pay too much fees, transport fares, and most of them can't focus because they focus on empty stomachs and everything. So it is something that needs to be discussed on higher level.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. Is this talking point ever gonna bring a change in terms of how restaurants or shops treat restaurants? Meaning, when we discuss this topic, is it gonna change how things are for students?
Yes, should it be discussed on higher levels, there can be a change based on which restaurants are approached, the restaurants that are mainly serving students. So if ever it is discussed on a higher level, then a change can happen.
You know, we have best marketers in SA, in South Africa. So why is it that this hasn't crossed their minds? Or maybe yes, but why hasn't it been put into action?
I think the level of realization to read, like there's not much of focus on it. Most students do go to school hungry. They go to home, they find like nothing to eat and everything. So even the lecturers as well, I feel like even the lecturers as well have to take part in this. Because once someone keeps quiet about it, then it is not something that will be realized if it is not discussed. Yes.
Okay. Do students deserve discount?
Yes, they do.
Why do you say that?
Because students, like, they are not working. They are halfway to their workplaces. They are halfway to their dreams. So there has to be a clear understanding of the fees and everything. They are the most people who are like responsible for the economy and everything because they pay too much fees, and those fees are someone's salaries, like the lecturer's salaries and everything. So they have to be given discount. In that way, it encourages them to study even harder because they study on full stomach. Yes.
Okay, if you were in the same position, what would you do to change this?
In the same position as a marketer or as a student,
Student,
how would I?
how would you change? Yeah, how would you change the whole thing?
I would first approach my campus's management team and then raise this issue. Then after, ask or beg students to give me support in terms of petition and everything. At first, it has to begin by the management and then the students. Then after, with the support of the students and the management, then it can be taken to those related restaurants. Then that's how action can be taken. But once there's no step or there's no call to action, then nothing can happen. Because if students do not raise the issue of being hungry and everything, no one knows that they do start on empty stomach. It has to be raised on a higher level.
Dipolelo, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, I mean, firstly, students can't afford everything. So with them telling us that they cannot like decrease or not give us a certain certain discounts on whatever they want to buy is like us not eating. Because firstly, the place that we're in is very expensive. So, and I mean, for myself, I can't afford everything that I want to buy. So if they cannot give us like a student discount, it's very sad. Because I'm sure that some people don't even eat while you're here. So yeah, it's very sad. I feel like they should give us student discounts, you know.
Is this talking point ever gonna bring a change in terms of how restaurants or shops treat students?
I feel like if people get into it and raise the point of giving students discounts, it can actually work. And they can actually start giving us discounts.
Okay. I mean, I must say, I have to tell you this. We have best marketers in South Africa. Why is it that this hasn't crossed their minds, or maybe they have, or maybe it has crossed their minds? So I just want to know, why has it been put into action? Why haven't they done anything about it?
Because I don't think they focus on us. They just focus on other things. Like their target market is not us, because we don't have money. So they don't focus. They know if they're going to focus on that, they're going to lose money. So they focus on people that actually have money, that can bring money to the company, you know. Yeah, so I think that's why they don't like consider giving us discounts and things like that.
And I don't understand why, because we are the ones who are buying. I mean, we are like every day.
You know, at the end of the day, we're supporting them like every day, but they can't like come to a point where they give us discounts. I mean, even if it's not every day, like for a month, they can like give us discounts on certain things, but they don't. So, yeah.
You are a student, meaning you are in the position like other students. You are in the same position as other students. So I want to know, what advice? No, let me start with this question.
Okay.
Do students deserve discounts?
Yes, they do deserve discounts. I mean, we don't work, so how are we going to be able to buy ourselves everything that we need, yet we don't work? So with the discounts, we can be able to buy ourselves things, you know. We don't have a lot of money, so...
What advice would you give people in the marketing industry?
No, I would tell them to look more into giving students discounts, because we're the one that actually provide a lot for them. We're the one that actually make money for them. So they should like focus on us for a minute, you know, and forget about the people that actually have money and can actually buy everything for themselves, because we can't, we don't work, so we just come here for school only, but we don't have that much money to buy things that we want to buy. I mean, like food, some things are just so expensive, it's actually ridiculous. Like chips are so expensive, like just a packet of chips is like 9 rand.
Sure.
I mean, come on, we students, can't it be like 5 rand at least? And save like 4 rand, you know, buy something after school, I don't know, you know. Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you too.
If you were a marketer, how would you have changed things, the dynamics, everything, strategies? Like how would you have changed things?
Okay, like I think in terms of like strategy, I don't know, have a stronger market research team. So like ask around students, sit down with different businesses and see like look at their budgets and how like they do their pricing, you know, get to know how, because like this question is very difficult. Yeah, but I'll sit down first with students, like make like a group and then sit down, ask them what type of discounts they would want, and then sit down with businesses and see if there would be a compromise and everyone would meet in the middle. I feel like.
Well, it's a very relevant and pertinent subject, especially at this time of our country's development. We're looking at transformation in all sectors of society, and obviously education is one of them. Now, if I read your question correctly, you're saying to me that there are certain commercial outlets that deny students the opportunity of getting a discount. If you sketch this against the broad backdrop of what currently is one of the fundamental issues in education in this country, is whether education should be free and open to all citizens of the country, or that education should be paid for. Now, that also opens another Pandora's box. And the question arises there, who is then going to pay for free education? So, by extension, the taxpayer or the government is tasked with the responsibility or obligation of paying those fees. Because obviously, in as much as an educational institute or an enterprise or an academic organization teaches, it also needs to make money in order to be viable. So therein lies a whole host of questions which need to be answered. If education is to be made free and fair for all youngsters in this country, which I would love to be the case, okay, do we have the infrastructure which can accommodate the groundswell of students who will be doing tertiary education or college or technically associated education? Who's going to pay for it? And how much is it going to cost? What will be the impact on society? And in the final analysis, to what extent will the middle class once again be revisited in order to pay the account? Because as we've often spoken, with great deference to those that don't have money, they can't afford to pay in the first instance, which is quite understandable. And then, of course, you have those that are at the other end of the spectrum, that are less inclined to get involved in the educational process. So by default, almost, we find that the middle class are often those that have got to pay for increases in the price of petrol, meet the costs of living, and pay VAT, and all of those other associated stealth taxes, which we are, shall I say, burdened with or responsible for. Now, to bring it closer to your question, I do believe that students should get discounts, in as much as pensioners get discounts. If a citizen, okay, doesn't have the monetary wherewithal or the financial wherewithal to afford some of the basic public services which are free and available to citizens in other countries, why should that not apply to South Africa? So, once again, if a student approaches a particular corporate or a small to medium business enterprise, a retailer, an outlet, anything of that ilk, I totally subscribe to the fact that a student should get a discount.
Talking about relevance,
Yes.
is this talking point ever going to bring a change in terms of how restaurants or shops treat students?
Well, I see commercial intelligence and sense in it as well. If you want more customers, okay, attract those customers who can't afford the full price that you charge other people, but at least you're getting foot traffic, and give them a bit of a discount. And so it becomes economically viable to do that. I'm no economist, but if I have a coffee shop where, for instance, a normal person, okay, whatever that is, can walk into the coffee shop and buy a cappuccino for 22 Rand, why not give the student a discount of 2 or 3 Rand? Okay, you're losing out on 2 or 3 Rand on a cup of coffee, but you're still making your profit margin, because we know that the profit margins on a cup of coffee are quite large, shall we say, okay? Let's look at clothing. Let's look at transport. One of the biggest issues among students in this country is the fact that we don't have a viable transport infrastructure. So in many instances, students have to take 1, 2, 3 taxis or become part of a lift club, and just getting from point A to B, for instance, getting from your place of work or home to go to your educational institution, is a mission. Discounts should be afforded to those people that don't have the wherewithal to be able to afford the full fee. Let's say a taxi ride costs you 20 Rand. Have the students pay 15 Rand. Is it such a problem? Not necessarily so. Perhaps other people might disagree with me from an economic point of view. And I say that by continually giving discounts to people that you're going to put yourself out of business. I don't necessarily think that's the case. And by the same token, When you think of things like a minimum wage for people in the country, okay, that's also another problem. Who's going to be paid and who's going to be paid what, okay, for a living wage, and who's going to foot the bill? Whereas this question could be much more easily answered by allowing students to get a discount in every facet of their lives. If you want to go and buy a skipper or a good pair of sneakers, or you want to do a course or some degree or any other educational qualification, why should education be one of the most expensive aspects, okay, of gaining trajectory in the marketplace and in the society in which you live? And in that sense, I think maybe one of these problems of students being impecunious or not having money to be able to spend like other people can be found in giving them the opportunity to get a discount. So there is another field of, there's another catchment area of potential customers which you're neglecting if you look at it from a purely economic point of view, which you could have on board if you took 1 or 2 rand off the price of your goods, services and products.
Talking about it, we have best marketers in South Africa.
Yes.
Just want to know, why is it that this hasn't crossed their mind, or maybe it has? Why hasn't it been put into action?
There needs to be a consolidation of various forces in society for this to take place. You've got to have the government, civic bodies, society at large, and other interested role players, actors, and parties coming to the table and discussing this in such a way that hopefully they come to this kind of resolution. Let's look elsewhere in the world, for instance, where there's free and fair education, but you've got to pay it back. And a lot of students in Britain, for instance, spend so many years of their lives, even when they become employed, paying back their varsity fees or their tertiary educational fees, which is an impediment to their progress. Okay? The same can be said for trying to get housing, accommodation. You know, you take Johannesburg, for instance, I mean, accommodation's at a premium. To find within a certain economic bracket the kind of accommodation that students would require. And that's why you have so many fly-by-nights that are buying a property which is close to an academic institution and turning one house into accommodation for some 50 or 60 students. And it becomes like an academic ghetto. Okay? So you've got all these interesting questions that revolve around the main thrust of what you're trying to get to. Why hasn't that mindset set in amongst those people that can affect this change, whereby students' lives can be made financially a little more bearable? And having worked at Boston for so many years, I've noticed, it's not difficult to notice, that students' biggest problem is, of course, the fact that the cost implications of what they're doing, measured against the outcomes, okay, need to be taken into consideration. Students, yourself and many others, we've often discussed, why is it so expensive for me to become educated? Okay, why is it made so difficult for me to become educated? When I take all of these factors in consideration, and they are cost of living, which includes cost of food, cost of transport, okay, fees, okay, and anything else that a student needs to equip themselves to be able to get their education in a less disorderly and a more functional way. Because let's face it, education in this country, and I suppose globally in a sense, finds itself in a state of dysfunction at the moment, largely because of the fact that we're pouring old wine into new bottles. We're using 20th century paradigms to teach in the 21st century. The fourth revolution's coming down the road. In fact, it's right here on our threshold. And I find little education is directed towards addressing the future. We're still learning about 20th century paradigms which no longer relate to the 21st century. Are we training, educating our students in such a way that they can take on artificial intelligence, robotics, and all of the new technologies which are going to appropriate the new market.